Alright, everybody, let's continue our whole deep dive analysis, discussion, review of this brilliant book about Thomas Jefferson. Let's continue. At 11:45 on Friday, Patty Jefferson died. Well, that's the way to start the video. Jefferson's wife has died. She died on a Friday. In the final moments, Jefferson's sister, Martha Carr, that's his sister, had to help the grieving husband from his wife's bedside. He was, his daughter recalled, in a state of insensibility when Miss Carr, with great difficulty, got him into the library, where he fainted, and not for a brief moment Jefferson remained so long insensible that they feared he would never revive. Wow, just deep pain. I mean, she's been with him. Remember, though, earlier we learned in the book that he really worried about her. He took care of her. He was a very good husband. Sure, not everyone is perfect, but he, took water up to her lips. Like, he's done something. He was there when she lost their children, remember? She was there for him when their home was attacked, when they had to leave Monticello. It's his companion is gone. It's not like today, where people sleep with everyone and everything and then they say goodbye. It's quite different. When he did come to, he was incoherent with grief, and perhaps surrendered to rage. There is a hint that he lost all control in the calamity of Patty's death. According to his daughter Patsy, the scene that followed I did not witness, presumably the scene unfolded in the library when he revived. But the violence of his emotion, when, almost by stealth, I entered his room by night, to this day I dare not describe myself. Patsy was writing half a century later. Wow. I mean, what do you really love somebody? They die. It's only natural, right, that we ourselves would have such an emotion. I mean, he loved her. They were a team. They'd been through so much together, and now he's alone in the cosmos without her. A pallet to lie on was brought to give him some comfort in the little library, yet his grief drove him out of doors in a kind of frenzy. Patsy attached herself to her father, as if clinging to the one remaining constant in her life, for her siblings had come and gone, and now her mother was dead. That's really true, right? She's lost siblings, her mom's died, and now her father has to bear the weight of being both forms of comfort. It's quite a lot of work. Given the demands of his wartime leadership, Jefferson would have seemed a loving, if somewhat distant figure to her. Yet he adored his family, idealizing it in many ways, and he would have seen in Patsy, with her great strength and evident maturity, in dealing with the father in the grip of grief. That's quite interesting. So his daughter was kind of like, we can look up to her, is that how do you comfort your dad in a time of grief of that nature? My best friend had to comfort her mother when her father died of prostate cancer. It is not an easy thing to deal with grief when you really love that person. And I mean, when one of my aunts died, she had an alcohol and pill addiction. My cousin, I'd call him my uncle, but he's my cousin. He was very grief-stricken at the funeral. I mean, I haven't seen a guy cry like that before. He loved his mom. He really loved his mom, and after that funeral I never saw him again. I don't know if he's dead or alive. That was years ago, but after she died, he just went away from the entire family. He was just gone. And his dad, he didn't have a relationship with his father. It's really interesting how siblings must help their parents and one another when family dies. Images of his mother, of his sister Jane, and of course Patty. He held her close. She held him close. The pattern of warmth and intimacy between father and daughter that set in during this dark spell of despair persisted for the rest of their lives. That's good. Instead of going their different ways, they stuck together. He kept his room for 3 weeks, and I was in every moment from his side, Patsy said. Think about that. He mourned the death of his girl for 3 weeks. There's guys and women who, after a relationship ends, man, they just move on. They got someone in their bed next day. They're on Tinder, they're looking. Here, though, Imagine a guy mourning you. You should want a guy to mourn you like that when you die. So many be like, oh, good, I'm glad, like, she's dead. The more cold we become with intimacy, the more we don't care about marriage, the less we focus on character traits and more just on body, we're really setting ourselves up for pain. It's nice to read about somebody still loving someone, even if the author, I'm sure, is adding some type of romantic finesse to it, but it's something to think about. He walked almost incessantly night and day, on lying down occasionally when nature was completely exhausted on a pallet that had been brought in during his long fainting fit. Now, fainting is like just overwhelmed with grief. I've had grief where I feel like I was choking on my own air, but a faint, no. But if you love somebody, hopefully I'm never tested like that, but I can understand why some people have it, right? My aunts remained constantly with him for some weeks. I do not remember how many. He could not remain still. When at last he left his room, he strode out, and from that time he was incessantly on horseback, rambling about the mountain and the least frequented roads, and just as often through the woods. That sounds exactly like what I would do. I literally kind of do that mini through the video games. Is exactly what I would do. Nothing better. Seriously. You go on horseback, stay away from people, wander through that fresh breeze. That's why nature is so therapeutic. And now people are in New York City, locked inside their homes, staring at a screen, being as their savings crumble and rioters ruin everything. And there maybe some of them are dealing with COVID deaths or suicides and stuff like that. It's quite sad, isn't it? That's why we have to appreciate nature and keep it around us. In those melancholy rambles, I was his constant companion, a solitary witness to many a burst of grief. A burst of grief. Yeah, I've had those. I think we've all had that, right? Where you just, all of a sudden, like, it's like you just comes out. When my friend's father died, some people, they were pretty hard on her. I was like, hey, why aren't you over it yet? She would break down crying. So it's like when you really love somebody, the tears will come and they'll come into your mind at random moments. It's a lot to think about. The remembrance of which has consecrated particular scenes of that lost home beyond the power of time to obliterate. He drove himself as though sheer movement could alleviate his loss. I've done that. I think a lot of people who are very into, trying to get over pain. Some people like to wallow in their pain. They make a persona out of their pain. But those who want to conquer it and get over it and to really push through it, you have to move. That's true. That's why I'm making sure during this lockdown to constantly go outside, to move. And you gotta keep walking. Even if you're walking and you're just staring at something, you gotta do it. In one of the first letters he wrote after the disaster of September 6, 1782, he said, I had some thoughts of abstracting myself while from this state by a journey to Philadelphia or somewhere else northwardly. Rumor had Jefferson nearing madness. I ever thought him to rank domestic happiness in the first class of the chief good, Edmund Randolph told James Madison. Wow, so Edmund Randolph's writing to James Madison letting him know about the conditioner of Jefferson, but scarcely supposed that his grief would be so violent as to justify the circulating report of his swooning away whenever he sees his children. Swooning away whenever he sees his children. Swooning. His epitaph for Patty came from Homer, from the heart of the Iliad. See, that's why it's brilliant to read Homer and the Iliad. So many people throughout history have read it, and whenever you read those books, you definitely feel like you're connecting with so many others who have read it over time. He had the words inscribed in Greek. Only the educated would be able to share in his memorial to his wife. That's the best way. I'm starting to see more wisdom in that. Something, Some people don't deserve to know things. Let them wallow in their ignorance. They shouldn't be included. Alexander Pope had translated lines Jefferson selected this way: if in the melancholy shades below the flames of friends and lovers cease to glow, yet mine shall sacred last, mine undecayed, burn on through death and animate my shade. Oh, I got chills. Burn on through death. His glow, his flames, sacredly will last. They're not going to be decayed. They're going to stay up. Even if it's a melancholy shade, it'll still go on and animate him and press him forward. The ghosts in his memory pushing him onward through the grief, the precious memories thereof.